So what's next? That's a question that I hear repeated over and over again. I see it posted on various podcasts, articles, blogging sites, etc. And I think it's a good question and it needs addressing. What I want to underline is that after the roaring success of the No Kings 2.0 mass demonstration, I think what we need to do is to continue to emphasize that this is a movement. It's not a one and done event. We did that, we got 7 million people to go out in the streets and they protested and it was very, very successful. And then we can all go back and sit on our couches and watch Netflix. This has to be a sustained movement. We have to do a lot of smaller things as well as the very large things like this mass demonstration. So what I want to cover here in this brief video is just some simple things that we can do. And we've done those in most cases, but they need to be done on a sustained pattern. So for instance, there's a multiplicity of different tactics that we can use, and some of them have been used in isolated events. For example, one of the ones that I think is really, really excellent happened in Seattle, where a group of University of Washington students went on an overpass in Seattle, and each person lined up on the overpass with a single letter, and they spelled out a sentence. And what they did is they had two separate protest messages. And every 5 seconds, what each individual did is that they switched their card with their letter, and they turned it around, and it had a different letter, and it spelled out a new protest message. And they kept doing that over and over and over again every 5 seconds. I posted it on my Facebook page because I thought it was so effective, but in a very limited way because I only did it for a short period of time. And of course, it only appeared in Seattle. And what I'm trying to get across is that we need to do this across the United States and in a sustained way. So not just one day or even a few days, but we need to do it over and over and over and over and over again, constantly pushing the message because repetition is incredibly important. We could also, for instance, have large banners that are spread across the overpasses of freeways. Republicans want to double your health insurance premiums. That would make a great banner. We could just sit there and have people on the overpass just simply holding that, and as the traffic goes by or is caught in kind of like a parking lot rush hour traffic jam, they'd see this message and it would just constantly reinforce the Democratic message that the shutdown is the responsibility of the Republicans and they refuse to address the issue of doubling or tripling premiums for health insurance. Another example is, of course, to demand more town hall meetings. Now, the House in Congress has been on recess because Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, has disbanded the House for at least a month so far, and there doesn't seem to be any indication that he's going to bring the House back into session anytime soon. What flabbergasts me a bit is that the Democrats haven't been holding hundreds of town hall meetings across the country. I don't mean an occasional Zoom town hall meeting or an in-person town hall meeting once, let's say, a month. I'm talking about having multiple town hall meetings over and over and over again. If the 262 Democrats in Congress were holding these town hall meetings during this recess, and they did it, let's say, 4 or 5 or 6 times during the time that the Congress is out of session, this would amount to hundreds, even potentially thousands of different town hall meetings. And then the idea, of course, is for Democrats to show up to these town hall meetings and express their outrage as what is going on with the shutdown and the fact that the Republicans refuse to negotiate about the increase in premiums for health insurance. So that's another issue that I think needs expanding, and it needs to be sustained. Another issue that has perplexed me and caught me a little bit by surprise is that when Donald Trump had the East Wing of the White House just completely destroyed, there was outrage, and people did remark in various ways that they were outraged by the destruction of the East Wing. But I have yet to see hundreds, even thousands of people showing up outside the White House and protesting the destruction of part of the White House, of the East Wing. And then, of course, the proposed 90,000 square foot ballroom that seems to be completely unnecessary. So that's another thing that I think we easily could do. And there would be protest signs, of course, that I think would be appropriate in the East Wing demonstration. Let me give you some examples of some possibilities. This is from actually some very limited protests that have been done about the East Wing demolition. For example, it's the big ugly ballroom at the big ugly price. Another one is a huge ballroom for a president who dances like a robot. A third one is build a huge ballroom or feed the poor. Tough decision. What's next? A demolition derby on the White House lawn? Those are some possibilities for protest signs that you could have while standing outside of the White House and protesting the demolition of the East Wing. You need to do this not dozens of times, but many, many, many times constantly as this issue continues to outrage the American public. Then, of course, you could exploit what I've called novelty and humor as attention strategies. And this, of course, has been done in a number of ways, especially by what I consider to be very clever and oftentimes humorous protest signs. And I'd like to give you just a quick recitation of some of the ones that I think are particularly humorous or clever. For instance, I saw one that said, IKEA has smarter cabinets. I saw another one that said, fight truth decay. A third one, eggs are so expensive because all chickens are in Congress. Justice, loving America, versus just ice, equaling hating America. Another one, outlaw billionaires. That has a nice double meaning if you stop and think about that. And the final one, greed meets no needs. So those are some of the ways of exploiting novelty and humor in terms of protest signs. There are other ways of doing that, of course, and one of them that I think is particularly effective is to mock ICE out in front of their facilities. And of course, we saw that happening very effectively in Portland when somebody showed up in a frog outfit and then it just caught fire. Pretty soon people were showing up in chicken outfits, they were showing up in dinosaur outfits, they were out there dancing. Very, very effective because Trump on the one hand is saying that Portland was on fire and there was violence in the streets. And then you see video of these individuals in these costumes and it becomes laughable. The whole Trump idea or message that he's trying to communicate is shown to be a complete fraud. So that, I think, is very effective. And then what I've called in my book, Willful Ignorance and Stupid Political Decisions, the army of refutational warriors. What I mean by that is that all of us have the opportunity to be able to fight back against the rise of autocracy and despotism and the loss of democracy by engaging those who try to take the defense of Trump to social media and refute what these individuals say. And yes, I know that many times individuals will say, and I've seen this many times on my own Facebook page, where they'll say, well, it's pointless to argue with MAGA types or those who try to defend Trump. And my argument is that if you leave the entire social media space to those who are defending Trump and the MAGites, then that message is the only one that a lot of people hear, especially independents or people who might be inclined to actually change their minds. So I always respond to these individuals until in some cases they get really abusive and in some cases just obscene, and in that case I just block them. But in most cases what happens is that I will challenge them, and I usually challenge them by simply saying, where's your argument and where is your evidence to support your argument? In almost every case, and I'll say probably close to at least 90% of the time, they disappear into the ether because they don't have an argument and they don't have evidence to support it. All they do is they have insults and they have assertions. On occasion, what they'll do is they'll say, prove me wrong, which of course is what is called shifting the burden of proof. And it goes along with Charlie Kirk, who had his famous sign on his so-called debates where he said, "Prove me wrong." That's shifting the burden of proof. In terms of logic, what it means is that anybody who makes the claim has the responsibility to prove the claim. And when you say that you make a claim and then somebody says, well, what evidence do you have to support that? And they turn around and say, well, prove me wrong. They're shifting their burden. If they made the claim, they must prove their claim first. And you don't have to do anything in terms of refutation other than to say, what is your evidence to support that? If they provide evidence for it, then you can challenge the evidence and say maybe it's not credible evidence, or it's from a bad source, or it's incorrect. But if they don't provide any evidence, then they basically have lost the argument because they haven't presented an argument that's supportable. Finally, I think it's important that you post brutality from ICE agents on social media, and we should be doing that on a sustained basis over and over and over again. There's a lot of those kinds of videos that are floating around, but the tendency, I think, is to show them once and then to, shut them down. What we should be doing is constantly showing them over and over and over again and leaving them up there, because a lot of times people don't see that right away, and it is on a delayed basis. So these are just some of the smaller ideas that you can use to participate in a sustained effort to create this movement to defend democracy and to fight against the rise of autocracy and despotism that we see unfolding in this country. If you like this video, please say so by subscribing. Thank you.